Hello, friends. Welcome. Here we are discussing real stories told by real people. Today we have a story about a man who was cheated on by his wife for several months. Let's see what happens. Clayton Morrow returned home earlier than usual that day. There was fatigue in his movements after a long day at work. Clayton was a tall, slender man with an angular face and short-cropped dark hair. He wore a simple gray suit and black glasses that accentuated his serious gaze. Janissa greeted him at the door with an anxious smile. She was short, with long golden hair that was tied up in a careless bun today. She was wearing a light summer dress, which Clayton had always been particularly fond of. "Hello, dear. How are you?" "What is it?" she asked, coming up to him. "Tired," Clayton replied shortly, trying to hide his irritation. As he walked into the living room, his attention was caught by the flashing screen of Janissa's phone on the table. The message on the screen was open. "I can't wait for our next meeting." Clayton stopped, his heart beating faster. He went to the phone, hesitated, but then picked it up. Scrolling through the correspondence, he found more and more messages, each of which was like a blow to his heart. He didn't notice when Janissa came up to him. "Clayton, what are you doing?" Her voice was trembling with excitement. "Janissa, what are these messages?" "Who is Tucker?" His voice was cold and calm, his gaze intense. She turned pale and took a step back. "Oh, that. It's not what you think. It was just a joke," she began hurriedly, but Clayton interrupted her. "A joke? Janissa, I see the pictures. It's been going on for months." Janissa lowered her head, her shoulders shaking. "Clayton, I made a mistake. Can we talk?" Her voice was barely audible. "Talk. I do not know what you can say to change what I have seen." Clayton put the phone down on the table. He could feel anger and frustration building up in his chest. He looked at the wife he thought he knew and realized that this was a completely different person. Clayton was standing at the living room window, looking out but not seeing her. Night fell imperceptibly, enveloping the city in darkness. The room was quiet, only the ticking of an antique clock filled the space with tense silence. Janissa walked slowly over to him. Her footsteps were barely audible on the soft carpet. "Clayton, please talk to me." Her voice sounded pleading. He was silent, not turning to her. His profile was impenetrable and calm. "I know I was wrong," she continued. "I want to fix everything." Clayton turned slowly to her, his eyes filled with sorrow. "Fix it." His words seemed icy. "How are you going to do that, Janissa?" She sighed, folding her arms over her chest. "I want to go to therapy. We could go together. Please give us a chance." Clayton looked at her as if seeing a stranger in front of him for the first time. "Therapy? Do you think this will help?" His tone was sarcastic. I, I really want to try." Janissa sounded desperate. "Try? After everything that's happened?" Clayton turned to the window, hiding his feelings again. Janissa came closer to him, almost touching his shoulder. "Clayton, I know I violated your trust, but I love you and I don't want to lose you." He was silent, not answering. A shadow of doubt flickered in his eyes, but he quickly suppressed it. "I do not know, Janissa. I, I need time to think about everything." His voice was tired. Janissa nodded, trying not to cry. "I understand. I'll give you as much time as you need," she whispered, trying to hug him. Clayton stepped back, avoiding her embrace. "I need to be alone," he said softly and headed for the bedroom door. Left alone, Janissa sank down on the sofa, covering her face with her hands. The room was silent again, broken only by quiet crying and the regular ticking of the clock. Clayton closed the bedroom door behind him and sat down on the edge of the bed. His mind was overflowing with thoughts, each of which aggravated his pain. The walls that had once seemed cozy and warm to him now seemed cold and alien. In the darkness of the room, he tried to find answers. Why did Janissa do this? Could he ever trust her again? Memories of the first days of their acquaintance flashed through his mind of how they planned the future together. How could it all collapse so mercilessly? Meanwhile, in the living room, Janissa slowly got up from the sofa. She went to the bar in the corner of the room and poured herself a glass of wine, trying to calm the trembling in her hands. The lamplight reflected in the glistening tears on her cheeks. She felt the wine warming her from the inside, but the cold in her heart remained unchanged. Janissa returned to the couch and picked up her phone. She flipped through the old messages between her and Tucker, each of which now seemed like a mistake to her. She wondered if it was worth all the pain she had caused. After long minutes of silence, Clayton decided he needed air. He got up and walked slowly back into the living room. When he saw Janissa, he stopped in the doorway. "I'm going out," he said calmly. Janissa looked at him, her eyes full of hope and fear. "Clayton, will you come back?" Her voice was trembling. "Yes, I'll be back. I just need a little time to think about it." His response was gentle but decisive. Clayton put on his jacket and headed for the door. As he passed Janissa, he touched her shoulder lightly. This brief touch felt like a farewell to the past and an uncertain step into the future, which both of them had yet to determine. Clayton was returning home late at night. The wind whispered coldly between the autumn leaves, and the city lights twinkled in the distance. There were parked cars along the street, and Clayton walked slowly past them, lost in his thoughts. At home, he found that Janissa was already waiting for him in the living room. Her eyes were filled with anxiety. "Clayton, I'm glad you're back. We need to talk," she said, getting up from the couch. Clayton took off his jacket and hung it carefully on the hanger. His voice was calm, but there was wariness in it. Janissa came up to him, her hands shaking slightly. "Clayton, I know I did the wrong thing, but I don't want to lose you. I'm really sorry." Her voice was shaking. "Janissa, we've been through this. Pity doesn't change what happened." He stood looking at her from a distance. She nodded, taking a deep breath. "I understand, but I think we can get through this together. We could try again," she was insistent. Clayton walked slowly to the window, looking out at the street. "I'm not sure I can do that, Janissa. Not after everything that happened." His voice was barely audible. Janissa followed him. "I promise to change. I'll do my best. Please give me a chance." Clayton turned around, hesitation evident in his eyes. "I was thinking about our marriage and about how we could cancel it. It would be a clean break." Janissa flinched, her eyes widening in shock. "Cancel it? Are you seriously thinking about this?" "Yes, that's one option." Clayton looked her straight in the eye. "But why? Why do you want to try to save our marriage?" She was almost on the verge of tears. "Because, Janissa, sometimes saving a marriage is not the best solution. Sometimes it's better to let go." His voice was firm and determined. Janissa shook her head, clearly shocked by his words. "I want you to know that I'm not going to do this in secret. I plan to hand over the documents to you in the presence of your parents." Clayton continued, "In front of my parents." Her voice jumped. "It's humiliating, Clayton. I think it's fair. They need to know what's going on in our marriage. You deserve an opportunity to explain yourself to them." He stood rigidly. Janissa sank into a chair, covering her face with her hands. "I never thought it would end like this." The morning greeted Clayton with a cool and clear sky. He was standing at the window of his kitchen, holding a cup of hot coffee in his hands. The street outside the window was coming to life. The neighbors were starting their day. Suddenly, his phone rang. It was Janissa. "Clayton, can we talk?" Her voice was soft but insistent. Clayton sighed. "All right, tell me," he said, leaning on the kitchen table. "I've been thinking all night about you, about us, and I realized that you were right. We both deserve to start over." Janissa sounded determined. Clayton was silent for a moment, considering her words. "I'm glad you realized that, Janissa. I think it's the best solution for both of us," he finally replied. "I agree, and I want you to know, I will always wish you only the best." Her voice trembled with emotion. "Thank you, Janissa, and so do I." Clayton felt a certain weight lift from his shoulders. After the bell rang, he stared out the window for a long time. The thought of a new beginning was spinning in his head. He decided that today was a good day for a change. Clayton went outside and headed to a nearby park. Walking in the fresh air always helped him think. He walked slowly, breathing in the autumn air, filled with the aromas of withering leaves and earth. In the park, he saw an old friend, Mark, waving at him from a bench. "Hi, Clayton. It's been a long time." Mark greeted him, smiling. "Hi, Mark." "Yes, indeed." Clayton sat down next to her. "How are you? What's new?" Mark looked at him with interest. "A lot has changed. I have just completed a chapter of my life. I'm looking for a new beginning." Clayton plunged into the conversation. Mark nodded, looking at him knowingly. New beginnings can be difficult, but they open the door to new opportunities. What are you planning to do next? I haven't decided yet, but I'm thinking about the possibility of moving, maybe even change jobs. Something new, something fresh. Clayton mused, looking at the pond in front of him. Sounds like a great plan. If you need help or just want to talk, you know where to find me. Mark put his hand on his shoulder. Thanks, Mark. I appreciate that. Clayton smiled back. They talked a little more, discussing various topics as the sun began to set. So we have come to the end of this story. Please write your opinion in the comments. We will be interested to know it. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our channel so that you don't miss new, even more exciting stories. We wish you good luck.